Imagine a world where the future of an entire continent hangs by a thread, or rather, on a simple promise. We typically assume that empires are born in the thunder of great battles, amidst the dust raised by armies of 100,000 and the crashing of crowns. However, the path of the Mongol state, which redrew the map from the Pacific Ocean to Hungary, was nearly cut short right at the starting line. Its history could have ended on a cold day in 1178 in a desolate steppe wasteland, far from any witnesses or chroniclers. At that moment, an exhausted teenager named Temujin stood frozen in the middle of an icy void. The young man had fallen into despair. The last crumbs of hope had been stolen from his family, 8 sorrel geldings. The laws of the steppe are harsh. A rider who loses his horse is doomed. He loses the ability to hunt, the strength to flee, and the slightest chance of salvation. The future shaker of the universe looked then not like a conqueror, but like a cornered victim whose fate depended entirely on a random traveler. Had the passerby simply ridden past, had he decided to rob the lonely youth, or had he simply shrugged his shoulders and returned to his herds, the name of Genghis Khan would have vanished into oblivion. The world would have retained its old shape. Rus, China, Khwarezm, Persia. Their fates would have flowed down entirely different channels. But the passerby stopped. This young man's name was Boorchu. Today begins the second cycle of our chronicles, the 4 heroes. Previously, we discussed the dogs of war, the ferocious Jelme, or the stern Kubilai. Now we dive into the inner circle, into the Holy of Holies. Boorchu knew neither slavery nor mercenary work. The son of Nakhu-Bayan, this golden boy of the steppe owned everything: fat herds, the protection of his clan, and a well-fed future. He embodied the complete opposite of Temujin, the outcast, and yet, locking eyes with a stranger who had lost all hope, he committed an act that defied the logic of that cruel time. Boorchu didn't just lend a horse, he abandoned his home, his wealth, and his father, and followed a man whom the entire steppe was hunting. We are about to dissect the anatomy of loyalty that became the foundation of the greatest land empire in history. You will learn how a burst of youthful nobility forged an iron institution of statecraft, the system of the Nökörs. We will analyze why Genghis Khan, who trusted no one, chose Boorchu specifically to be his second self. It will be revealed to us how this aristocrat of the spirit passed through humiliation and oblivion to prove devotion has no price. In contrast to Jelme, who was ready to drink clotted blood for his master, or Kubilai, who enforced discipline through fear, Boorchu brought something else to the wild steppe, a concept of honor that stood higher than profit. You are about to see how a friendship between boys transforms into a hierarchy where one becomes the god of war and the second becomes his right hand, leading armadas to the west. We will uncover the meaning of the famous refusal of reward, which became the ethical code for the Mongol elite. In the finale, we will understand why, even decades later, possessing half the world, Genghis Khan would say, without that horse gifted by Boorchu, he would have remained a nobody. This is not a story about war. This is a chronicle of how absolute trust turns into a deadly weapon. Welcome to an era where the fates of nations were decided not by the steel of a blade, but by the strength of a word. This is Chronicles of the Greats. The year 1178. History has preserved the exact date of the catastrophe that nearly erased the name of the Borjigins from the chronicles. Temujin's family, abandoned by their tribe, was surviving at the headwaters of the Onon and Kerlen rivers, subsisting on marmots and wild onions. The only treasure separating them from utter destitution remained 8 sorrel geldings. In the steppe, A horse was considered life itself. Without one, it is impossible to hunt, impossible to fight, impossible to escape. To lose one's mount meant turning into a stationary target. While his half-brother, Belgutai, was out hunting, riders appeared on the horizon. They didn't bother to kill the people or loot the yurts. They simply and silently drove off the herd. When the brother returned on foot, laden with game, the family realized the scale of the disaster. They were left with only one short-tailed gelding. Temujin made a decision instantly. Understanding that they would not survive the winter without horses, the youth jumped onto the last exhausted horse and rushed in pursuit, alone against the unknown. The chase lasted 3 days. Temujin kept his eyes fixed on the trampled grass, conserving the strength of his failing mount. At dawn on the 4th day, when hope had almost run dry, he spotted a herd and a strange young man busy milking mares. The moment of truth arrived, a collision of two worlds. The ragged, starving Temujin met Boorchu, the calm heir of the wealthy Nakhu-Bayan. The latter had everything: clan protection, abundance, and confidence in the future. Hearing the question about the missing horses, Boorchu did not chase the vagrant away. Instead, he spoke words that became the motto of a new era. "The sorrows of young men are shared. I will be your comrade." Something incredible happens. Casting aside thoughts of parental approval, Boorchu throws his milk bucket into the grass, puts his guest on a fresh mount, and sets off on the path with a man whose name he does not even know. 3 days later, they caught up with the thieves. The 8 geldings were grazing at the very edge of the camp. The teenagers executed a daring raid, driving the herd right out from under the enemy's nose. In the ensuing chase, a rider on a white horse nearly overtook them. Boorchu volunteered to shoot, but Temujin replied, "You are risking yourself for me. I will cover us myself." He fought off the enemies until twilight, until the pursuers finally retreated. Back home, Temujin offered his ally a share of the horses as a token of gratitude. However, in a world where loyalty was usually bought, Boorchu replied, "I helped you in your trouble. My father is rich and I have enough of his goods. If I take payment, what kind of help would that be? I will take nothing." This refusal shattered the customary norms. Boorchu rejected the role of a mercenary, proclaiming a loyalty based on charisma and duty. Thus, the institution of Nökörs was born, free warriors serving a personality, not blood ties. Temujin rode away with the horses, but he had acquired something priceless, a comrade ready for selfless heroism. The family was saved, but the old world had shifted for Temujin. Loyalty was found outside the clan. Boorchu returned to his father, and life in the steppe flowed on as usual. However, fate is not a straight line, but a drawn bowstring. Soon, while gathering his first warband, Temujin remembered the boy who had hidden his bucket in the grass. He sent a messenger, and Boorchu, again, without a wasted word, jumped into the saddle. This time, forever. Ahead of them lay not just a chase for a herd, but a fight for life itself. For soon, Temujin would lose something far more important than horses. He would lose his wife. Shortly after the incident with the horses, Temujin, whose position remained extremely precarious, made a decision that forever changed the structure of steppe power. He refused to seek alliances with chiefs of equal status. Instead, he sent his brother Belgutai to Nakhu-Bayan's yurt with a short message: "Come, I need you." This call served as a test. It is one thing to help a random traveler in a burst of youthful daring. It is quite another to abandon the life of an heir to serve a man who has nothing but enemies. The secret history of the Mongols has preserved the details of this moment with cinematic precision. Boorchu did not consult his father and did not pack his belongings. Hearing the call, he silently leapt onto his horse. The chronicle even remembered the color of the animal. It was a humpbacked buckskin horse. The young man tied only a gray wool cloak to his saddle, the sole possession taken into his new life. In that second, Boorchu committed social suicide. In the steppe, family is the only armor. By leaving a wealthy father, he forfeited his inheritance, legal protection, and status. He ceased to be an aristocrat, transforming into a Nökör. In literal translation, this means friend, but in the context of the era, the word took on a deeper, almost ominous shade, a comrade who belongs to you more than he belongs to himself. Life in Temujin's kuren at that time resembled not the headquarters of a future ruler, but a den of cornered wolves. They roamed at the sources of the Kerlen, in the harsh, wild borderlands where death could be hiding behind every ridge. And the blow fell at dawn. The earth trembled from the hooves of 300 riders. These were the Merkits, a tribe from whom Temujin's father, Yasuge, had once stolen his wife, Hoylin. Decades later, they had come to collect their debt. Here opens one of the darkest moments in the biography of the heroes. When the old woman Hoakchin warned of the attack, panic seized the camp. There were not enough horses for everyone. The secret history gives a ruthless list of those who managed to jump into the saddle. Temujin, his mother Hoylin, brothers Hasar, Hachun, Temuge, Belgutai, and two faithful friends, Boorchu and Jelme. For Temujin's young wife, Börte, no horse was found. Imagine this choice. Boorchu sees his leader, the future shaker of the universe, racing toward Mount Borkan Khaldun, leaving his wife to the enemies. The Nökör gallops alongside, becoming a witness to his master's humiliation. In any chivalric romance, the hero would be obligated to stay and die protecting the woman, but Boorchu follows the leader. That night, a rigid discipline of priorities was born. The life of the Khan is the life of the nation, and everything else is a resource that can be sacrificed. Boorchu accepted this logic first, not judging his friend, but covering his retreat. For 3 days, the fugitives hid in the wilds of Mount Borkan Khaldun. The Merkits, having taken Börte, departed. When all was quiet, Temujin descended, crushed. He beat his chest and thanked the mountain for saving his life, which was as worthless as a louse. But prayer alone was not enough. Boorchu's role changes. From companion, he turns into an intelligence officer. Temujin sends his 3 most trusted men, Boorchu, Belgutai, and Jelme, to track the enemy. For 3 days they trailed the army. This was no longer chasing horse thieves, but professional military craft. Boorchu had to determine if the Merkits had set an ambush. He returned with a report. The path was clear, but the price was terrible. Börte had been taken away and given as a concubine to the warrior Chilger Boke. Look at Boorchu's psychology during this period. The friends sleep under one blanket and share meager food, but they are no longer equals. In 1178, they were 2 teenage adventurers. Now, a chasm of hierarchy lay between them. Temujin makes the decisions, even shameful ones, and Boorchu executes them. It was then that the Nökör learned to separate the man from the mission. He serves not the guy who abandoned his wife, but the future he sees in his eyes. This is the harsh pragmatism of steppe survival. Temujin gathered allies, the powerful Togrul and his childhood friend Jamukha. A massive army dealt a crushing blow to the Merkits. In the night battle, Temujin rushed among the yurts, screaming his wife's name, and he found her. Börte ran to meet him, grabbing the reins of his horse. The family was reunited, but joy was overshadowed by bitterness. Börte returned pregnant and soon gave birth to a son, Jochi, the guest. Boorchu knew the secret of the firstborn's origin.
Through his silence and support, he helped Temujin legitimize the child, while aristocrats sarcastically whispered behind their backs about the Merkit bastard. The faithful Nökör accepted the Khan's choice. This is my son. His loyalty became a shield for the master's vulnerable honor. The enemy was crushed, the wife saved. Temujin and Jamukha combined their camps and roamed together for a year and a half. However, there cannot be two suns in one sky. Boorchu sensed friendship growing into rivalry. He noticed Jamukha's sidewise glances and his subtle insinuations. When the moment of rupture arrived and Temujin decided to leave into the night, Boorchu did not hesitate. He understood the real war was only just beginning. Ahead of them waited the Battle of Dalan Baljut, a place where Boorchu's loyalty would be tested by boiling water.
The friendship between Jamukha, sealed by oaths and the exchange of golden sashes, collapsed under the weight of ambitions for power. In the steppe, a harsh law prevails. Two leaders only find enough room until the first division of spoils. The rift spilled over into open war. Jamukha headed a coalition of 13 tribes, against which Temujin fielded his own detachments, 13 kurens. The adversaries clashed in the tract of Dalan Baljut. This battle turned into a catastrophe. The Mongol army, not yet transformed into that flawless military machine, wavered under the onslaught and turned to flight. Temujin found salvation in the narrows of the Onongerens. The defeat seemed final, but it was precisely this event that laid bare the abyss between the leaders. Jamukha, drunk on triumph, committed an atrocity that horrified even the nomads. He ordered the captive princes of the Chinos clan, who had supported Temujin, to be boiled alive in 70 cauldrons. He ordered the head of the chief Chagan Ua to be tied to a horse's tail and dragged through the dust. Boorchu watched this from the gorge. Looking at the smoke from the cauldrons in which his comrades were dying, he realized loyalty had acquired a new dimension. If before he served a true friend, now he was fighting against a monster. The choice in favor of Temujin transformed from a political one into a moral one. The Nökör understood. To yield to Jamukha meant not just to die, but to lose human dignity. Years passed. Temujin restored his influence, relying on an alliance with the powerful Genghis Khan, Togrul. However, luck in the steppe is as changeable as shifting sands. In 1202, Wang Khan was suddenly attacked by the Naimans under the leadership of the fierce Kukseo Sabrak. The Kerayet army suffered a collapse. The Khan's son, Nilka Senggum, was surrounded, and the people were driven into slavery. The aged ruler, accustomed to lecturing Temujin, found himself on the brink of death. In despair, he sent a messenger with a plea preserved through the ages. "My son, the Naimans have stripped me of my people. Send your 4 steeds. Let them save me." For the first time in the chronicles, this honorary term appears. Wang Khan asks not for an army, but for specific individuals. He knows 4 of Temujin's associates are worth an entire corps. These are Boorchu, Mukhali, Borokola, and Chilon. Temujin forgets old grievances and gives the order. Boorchu saddles his horse. Now he is not just a bodyguard, but the commander of an elite unit, setting off on an almost impossible mission. The detachment rides into the night. The detachment overtakes the enemy at the tract of Hulan Huti by the Red Cliffs. The situation looks hopeless. Senggum is wounded, his horse is shot out from under him, and the ring of encirclement is tightening. At this moment, Boorchu displays the talent of a strategist. Instead of a chaotic skirmish, he organizes a synchronized attack. The 4 heroes chop into the Naiman ranks like a steel wedge into rotten wood.
The coordinated actions of Boorchu and Mukhali allow them to cut off the enemy and recapture the captives. They tore Senggum from the jaws of death. They returned Wangkhan, his loved ones, and his herds. The shocked old man wept as he received the rescued. Twice Temujin saves my life. May heaven and earth reward him. But let us look closer at the details. Whom exactly did Boorchu rescue? Senggum, a man who secretly hated Temujin, the very traitor who just a year later would attempt to assassinate the Mongol Khan at a feast. Possessing political intuition, Boorchu surely realized the rotten nature of this ally, but he went into battle, risking his head, because the Khan's order stood above personal feelings. At the Battle of Hulan Huti, the Nökör passed the main exam for the rank of general. He proved his blade belongs to the state. The ability to separate emotions from strategy would become the foundation upon which Genghis Khan would erect his invincible empire. The triumph over the Naimans brought glory, but also bred anxiety. Temujin saw how easily oaths are broken. Even the rescued Wangkhan was already preparing a stab in the back. The old tribal ties were crumbling. The leader needed protection independent of the whims of chiefs. He needed those who would guard his sleep while the world thirsted for his blood. Thus he tasks Boorchu with creating a structure with no analog in the steppe, a sacred order and a guard rolled into one. Thus the Keshig is born. The years 1203 to 1204. Temujin crushes one enemy after another, yet instead of peace, fear reigns in his headquarters. In steppe warfare, there is no front and no rear. Death lurks everywhere. Poisoned kumis, a knife under the tent flap, the treason of yesterday's ally. The old order, based on the protection of blood relatives, had collapsed. It was the close kin who betrayed most often. Temujin realizes, for survival, it is necessary to surround himself with people without a past, without a clan, and without any will other than his own. It is necessary to create an artificial family. Temujin entrusts Boorchu with a mission exceeding any battle in complexity. He must not simply recruit guards, but design the Keshig, an institution that transforms into the steel spine of the empire. Previously, the guard numbered dozens of warriors. Now it expands to a tumen, 10,000 select fighters. But these are not just soldiers, they are hostages. Genghis Khan orders all commanders of thousands and 10,000s to send their sons to serve in the Keshig. Such a maneuver was a strategic triumph. Boorchu headed a structure that combined the functions of elite special forces, a forge for government administration cadres, and insurance against rebellions. Generals on the frontiers dared not revolt, realizing that their children were under the personal supervision of the Khan. Within the created system, Boorchu occupies an exceptional position. He is one of the 4 supreme commanders, the Durban Kulug, which means 4 heroes or 4 steeds. Boorchu, Mukhali, Borahula, Chilaun. We must draw a clear line. The steeds are often confused with the 4 dogs, Jebe, Subutai, Jelme, Hubilai, but their roles are polar opposites. The dogs embody aggression. They are unleashed upon the enemy. The steeds form the foundation of the throne. While Mukhali forged victory over China, Boorchu transformed into the shield. He focused on internal stability and governance. His efforts guaranteed the flawless operation of the imperial mechanism during periods of war. Let us look at the internal order of the Keshig under Boorchu's leadership. Discipline here was severe. The commanders implemented rigid regulations, punishing the slightest error with death. For unauthorized entry into the Khan's yurt at night, execution was mandatory, regardless of rank or belonging to the blood of the Genghisids. A simple guardsman surpassed any army commander of 1,000 in status. An insult to a simple guardsman by a warlord entailed punishment for the latter. Boorchu personally controlled the changing of the guard. The fine-tuned system worked flawlessly, 4 shifts, duty for 3 days. It is in this period that Boorchu's personality undergoes its final transformation. Before us is no longer the merry friend for stealing horses, but a stern administrator. Temujin could be certain Boorchu would not let even his own brother into the tent if he was not on the registry. Duty had completely consumed personal attachments. Why is this critically important? Together with Genghis Khan, Boorchu committed a social revolution. They built a state where power ceased to depend on the whims of tribal nobility. The foundation of the throne became a personally loyal guard. Boorchu demonstrated to the steppe dwellers a new social elevator. A shepherd's son, entering the Keshig and proving loyalty, gains the right to command nations. He himself served as the living embodiment of success. The mechanism is tuned, the enemies are smashed. The guard surrounds the golden tent like an indestructible wall. The year 1206, the year of the tiger. The tribes gather at the headwaters of the Anan for the great Kurultai. The air hums with tension. Temujin is solemnly proclaimed Genghis Khan, ruler of the ocean. The award ceremony begins. Eyes are turned to Boorchu, the first companion, the pillar of the throne. Those around do not doubt his share will be the greatest. But when Genghis Khan reads out the names of the heroes, there is no Boorchu. A ringing silence hangs over the steppe. An accidental mistake or a public humiliation designed to break the first Nökör.
1206, the year of the tiger. The headwaters of the Onan River. Here, a new point of reference for all of Asia is born. The great steppe war, which lasted for decades, has finally fallen silent. The enemies, Tartars, Naimans, Merkits, are erased from memory or absorbed. A massive Kurultai thunders across the giant plain. Tens of thousands of riders, a sea of horses. In the center flies the 9-tailed white banner holding the guardian spirit of the Borjigan clan. Temujin is proclaimed Genghis Khan, ruler of the ocean, Khan of Khans. The celebration marked not only the coronation, the moment of reckoning had arrived. Everyone awaited the hubi, the share. Steppe law dictates every warrior has earned a part of the spoils, and now the spoils were the empire itself. Genghis Khan reads out the list. He appoints 95 noyans, commanders of 1,000, the backbone of the new aristocracy. Among them are shepherds, carpenters, former slaves. Jebe, who once fired an arrow at the Khan, receives his recognition. The cook who saved his master from starvation is gifted. Nor is Sorgan Shira forgotten, who hid the young Temujin in a pile of wool. All eyes are fixed on Boorchu, the first companion. He stands at the right hand of the throne, the man who shared the last horse and the last piece of meat with the Khan. Everyone believes his name will thunder first. Genghis Khan continues. 50 names, 70, 90. Boorchu's name has still not been spoken. The list is finished. The crowd freezes. In steppe etiquette, public ignoring is worse than open hostility. It is social death. A whisper crawls through the ranks. Is Boorchu in disgrace? Has the Khan forgotten the one who saved his life? This is a cruel psychological game. The great manipulator deliberately created a vacuum of injustice. He was testing what drives his second self, loyalty or the thirst for gain. Boorchu stands motionless, not a shadow of offense, not a spark of anger. He coolly commands the guard as if nothing has happened. The drama erupted later in his yurt. Boorchu's wife paced in fury. "Why did you serve him? He showered grooms with gold, but you, who exposed your chest to arrows, he cast aside like an old dog?" Boorchu's answer became legend. "I do not serve for loot, nor for titles. I serve because I gave my word. Let him forget me. I will not forget my duty." The next morning, Genghis Khan addresses Boorchu before the entire people. "I did not name you yesterday, not out of forgetfulness. But is it fitting to thank the right hand for helping the body? You are me." His reward exceeds imagination. It is not just a title. Genghis Khan cleaves the empire into two wings. Mukhali receives the left wing, the east. Boorchu is appointed the ruler of the right wing, Barun Gar. Under his hand lies the entire west, the Altai, and lands to the very horizon. His will is nearly absolute. The Khan's instruction is brief. Punish lawbreakers in your wing with death without asking for my advice. But the greatest gift is legal immunity. Genghis Khan proclaims Boorchu Darkhan. He is forgiven 9 death penalty offenses. This right will pass to his descendants for 9 generations. No one dares touch Boorchu, even if he breaks the law 9 times. Why was this spectacle of forgetting necessary? Genghis Khan was building a system where the elite are united by an idea, not a feeding trough. If Boorchu had been outraged, had he demanded payment, he would have remained merely an expensive mercenary. By enduring the perceived humiliation, he proved his loyalty was sacred. Genghis Khan entrusted him with the right wing, knowing this man would never strike from behind. This episode permanently cemented the hierarchy. There is the Khan, there is his shadow in the form of Boorchu, and there are all the others. The exam is passed. Now Boorchu is the second man in the state. But there will be no quiet life. The machine of war has gathered speed. The Khan's gaze is fixed on the cities of China and the Islamic world. Boorchu is in the saddle again. He is no longer a youth chasing horse thieves. He is a graying general, followed by tens of thousands of sabers. Ahead lies the great campaign, where he is destined to become the judge in a fatal dispute between the sons of Genghis Khan. After 1211, the Mongol Empire ceases to be simply a nomadic state. It transforms into a transcontinental monster that finds it too cramped to have only one head. Genghis Khan makes a strategic decision that splits the world in half. The eastern direction, the war with the Jin Empire, is taken by Mukhali, who receives the title Go-Ong, Prince King. The western steppes and the preparation for the strike against the Islamic world, the Khan entrusts to Boorchu. Let us look at this moment more closely. Before us is not just an administrative division, but an act of absolute trust. Genghis Khan hands his first friend the keys to the original yurt, the very heart of the empire. While Mukhali storms Chinese fortresses, Boorchu rules the Altai and the western Uluses. His status as Barun Gar, the right hand and the punishing sword, secures his responsibility for the monolithic nature of the rear. It is he who ensures the stability of the state, while the army prepares the most ambitious invasion in history, the campaign against Khwarezm. With the start of the Great Campaign, Boorchu is inseparable from the headquarters. His role changes. Now he is not so much a field commander as a key political mediator. The secret history has preserved a description of a critical episode after the fall of Urgench. Jochi, Chagatai and Ögedei quarreled over the division of spoils, forgetting to set aside a share for their father. Genghis Khan's anger flared instantly. Refusing to receive his sons, the Khan effectively placed the empire on the brink of a dynastic schism. Who dared to save the situation? Not the wives and not the shamans. Into the tent of the enraged ruler walked Boorchu, Mukhali, and other Noyons. The old comrade addressed Genghis Khan not as a servant, but as an equal. Your sons have realized their mistake. They fear your anger. Do not reject them, for they are your wings. The Sartal people are conquered. We all rejoice. Why should you alone remain in anger? This dialogue reveals the true scale of Boorchu's personality. Only he possessed the right to say no to the emotions of the great Khan. By containing conflicts between the heirs, Boorchu kept them from fratricide. He served as that very collar that kept the coat of the empire from coming apart at the seams. The tragedy of Boorchu is that he did not live to see the final triumph of his life's work. The faithful companion passes away in 1226 on the threshold of the final campaign against the Tanguts. Boorchu lived a long life for a steppe warrior, full of battles and hardships. Unlike Mukhali, who burned out from illness, or Jebe, who vanished without a trace, the death of the first Nökör was quiet. He simply faded away. History has not preserved the details of Genghis Khan's reaction, but the context speaks louder than words. Losing Boorchu, the Khan lost a part of his own soul. The last person who had seen Temujin as a weak, hungry, and frightened teenager weeping over 8 stolen horses was gone. With the death of Boorchu, the Khan remained finally and utterly alone in the icy summit of the world. Boorchu left behind not just conquered lands, but the ethical code of Mongol statehood. The Altan Topçi preserved his famous instruction to Genghis Khan. The Khan is like the collar, and the people are like the coat. If the collar weakens, the coat will slip off. If the coat rots, the collar becomes useless. This legacy retained its power for centuries. The Arulat clan transformed into one of the most influential families of the empire, whose representatives occupied key posts from Persia to the Chagatai Wulus. Even 100 years later, in the times of Rashid al-Din, emirs from the house of Boorchu continued to command tumans in Khorasan. The faithful companion did not simply execute the master's will, he formed the ideal of service. With his life, Boorchu proved a Nökör acts not as a slave, but as a full co-author of great history. The first of the companions has departed, and soon the shaker of the universe himself will follow. However, the mechanism launched by this pair can no longer be stopped. And if Boorchu's loyalty laid the foundation of the state, and Genghis Khan's fury erected the walls, then for the triumph of the empire, a sword was required, a merciless blade aimed at the very heart of ancient civilizations. In the next episode, we will tell the story of a hero who was the complete opposite of the aristocrat Boorchu. He was born a slave. His own father brought the boy to Genghis Khan's yurt and gave him away like an object, saying, "Let him become the threshold of your door. If he runs away, tear out his tendons." But this slave will rise to an unreachable height. He will turn out to be the only one in history to whom Genghis Khan, while alive, will entrust his throne, his banner, and the right to be called the Emperor of China, the man who turned war into the art of governance, Mukhali, Go-ong, the king born in chains.